So the first thing I like to start off doing is just comb through the client's brows, and then I'm taking my Illamasqua Brow Cake in the shade Thunder, and I love this product just because it gives a softer appearance to the eyebrows, just because it is a powder, so it looks a little bit more softer on the brows, rather than like a pomade and stuff can look quite harsh. But I do like pomades, but for this particular look, because I want all the focus to be on the brow or on the eye look, I thought of using a more natural sort of brow product. So whenever I am filling a client's brows in, I place literally the majority of the product halfway through the brows and throughout the tail of the eyebrow, and then I use my brush to sort of feather the product back through the front, because you don't want to have a big sort of blocky brow. So literally do not be applying any product through the front of the brow. Just use whatever's left on your brush to create like soft and subtle lines, and then use your spoolie to sort of buff the product through the front of the brow. And I feel like this technique just works well. It gives you a nice soft eyebrow, but yet still nice and filled in, still nice and defined, but yet nice and natural look. It doesn't look too harsh. As you can see here, I'm just combing through the product with my little spoolie, and because it is a powder, it does blend really nicely too. So as you can see here, I'm just filling in the other brow, and then I do show you guys what products and brushes I use to carve out under the brows as well. Starting off with the shade Aphrodite from the Lime Crime Venus XL palette. At this point in the makeup, all I care about is sort of getting the product onto the lid and making sure that it's nice and intense. I don't really worry about blending at this point. All I'm doing is just sort of packing up my brush, loading it onto the eyes, and then repeating the step a few times, just so that the product looks really intense on the lid, and to make sure that it's really gripping onto that concealer, just to make sure that the pigment's going to be really intense and vibrant. And then whenever I have all the shadows sort of in that place and in the shape that I want, I take that same brush and just clean off the excess of that brush, and then use this same brush to sort of soften out these edges. Again, at this point, we're not worrying about getting it completely blended, because we are going to be applying another eyeshadow, but literally what we're doing is just going back and forth on that edge just to sort of soften it out and blend it out with that same brush. Then to add some more definition and colour and brightness back into the makeup look, what we're going to be doing is using this Cosette eyeshadow in the shade Infrared, and it's sort of like a pinky red shade, and what I'm doing with this is putting this right on the edge of that dark purple, and so this is going to make it look nice and ombre and nice and blended, just because we're going in from like that deep purple into this nice pinky red colour. And again with this, I'm just sort of packing it on, and then I'll take a clean brush to then blend out those edges of the pink. So at this point, it is really handy to have a couple of clean brushes by your side, just to sort of blend out edges, because you don't want to use dirty brushes and then everything will sort of look quite messy and quite muddy. So it's handy to have a clean brush at all times to sort of do any additional blending. And as you can see here, I'm bringing it quite far up to the brow bone as well, just because I feel like it just makes it slightly more dramatic and a little bit more smoky as well. I'm going back in with that same shade we initially put through the crease and just start building that up. Throughout blending and stuff, you do lose a little bit of the intensity of the eyeshadows, just because you are moving the shadows back and forth, and then the powder sort of just trickles off. So it is good just to kind of go in and repeat those steps again, just to really build up the pigment and just to reapply pretty much, just to make it more intense. So I'm taking this dark purple shade again from the Lime Crime palette, and then probably take the pink again and go over that, ensuring that everything is really seamless and blended. Then here I'm going in with the Zoeva 228 Luxe Crease Brush and just sort of using this brush to go over that pink just to make sure it's completely blended. Just because it is pink, you will see sort of any mistakes that you have, so you want to make sure that because it does stand out, you want to make sure that it is really blended and just looks really seamless. So now what I'm doing is starting off with the spotlight part of the makeup look. So here I'm taking the Helen E shadow base to carve out the sort of spotlight eye that I want to achieve here. So I'm using the MAC 228 brush to sort of get that effect. So this is a small brush, and because we're creating really sharp lines in such a small area, it is best to use a smaller brush for this, just because it'll give you most precision. So with this, I'm just taking this through the socket, just slightly above the socket, in fact, just because whenever your client opens the eyes, you want to still be able to see that you can see the spotlight, because if you put it directly in their crease, they'll just open their eyes, you'll not see it. So make sure that it's slightly above their actual crease. So as you can see here, I'm just creating this sort of wee side C shape sort of, and then dragging the rest of the product just down onto the lid, because we want there to be a base for the pigment that we're going to apply later on. So now I'm just taking this random little brush, I'm not too sure which one it's from, it's just a small synthetic eyeshadow brush, and with this I'm really sort of blending out this eyeshadow base, making sure there's no harsh lines, because if there is, any of the other shadows that we apply later on will just sort of cling to those edges, so you want to make sure that everything is completely seamless. Don't worry about blending out your little harsh line at the top, because we do want to still keep that harsh line there. So we're more concerned about getting those edges blended out really, and always remember to blend into the center, because you don't want to drag your concealer back out the way. So sort of use your brush and blend in the way, and then that will seamlessly blend it for you. So then I'm taking the shade Bocelli from the Lime Crime Venus XL palette on a Crown C528 brush, and using this in the inner portion of my client's eyes and the outer portion as well. So now for the sparkle, I'm taking the Neve Cosmetics pigment in Jellyfish, and this looks white in the little tub, but whenever you put it on, it has a gorgeous sort of pink glow or a decent finish to it. It's gorgeous. So what I'm doing with this is putting this around the sort of top part of the spotlight, and then taking a more deeper sort of version of this pigment from Makeup Atelier Paris on the rest of the eyelid, just so there's a little bit more dimension going on the eye look, and it's not just all the one shade. I sort of like to do this as well, because it stands out a little bit better in photos as well whenever you have a variety of different shades in the lids, just because I feel like it stands out a little bit more. As you can see here, I'm just sort of worried about getting the pigment down, not worried about blending it, just making sure it's really stuck down onto that eyeshadow base. And then here what I'm doing is taking that crown brush again and using that dark shade again, and sort of blending it back into the pigment, just to make sure that there's no harsh lines and that everything is completely seamless. This part of the makeup really brings it all together, I think, and I'm using the Urban Decay Razor Sharp Liner in Gold Rush and just sort of going round the top of that spotlight, and I feel like this just makes it so much more intense, so much more glam, and just sort of makes it a lot more neater as well, just because this is just like the little line that makes everything really stand out, and I would totally recommend doing this in your spotlight eyes. It just makes everything look a lot nicer in my opinion. Then just taking a little wet wipe and just using this to remove any fallout and stuff, and making sure that I go really careful around the outer portions of this eye look. I don't want there to be any harsh lines. I want everything to be quite seamless and blended around the outsides of the eyes. So whenever you are cleaning up the outer portion there, just make sure you're using soft, gentle strokes rather than creating like a sharp line right across. Some makeup looks look gorgeous like that, although this one I feel like it looks a lot better if it's slightly softer. But yeah, just taking a little makeup wipe just to remove all the fallout. Then I'm using the shade Sunlight from Cover FX. These are the custom enhancer drops that I always use under on most of my clients. If my client was really oily, I wouldn't do this step just because these products are a little bit more oily, and obviously we don't want to add more oil to my client's skin. But I feel like on more dry to normal skin clients, this is a perfect step. It gives a nice base to your foundation, and it also makes your foundation look so much more glowy and golden and just really healthy looking on the skin. So I just sort of buff this in with this Real Techniques brush just all around the skin, and then I'm going to go in with my foundation. Then I'm taking my Maybelline Superstay Foundation in the shade Caramel with my MAC 191 brush, and then to blend it in I use the 126 Luxe Cheek Finish brush from Zoeva, and I just love applying it with sort of a flat brush first and then taking this fluffier brush to blend it out, and I feel like it just looks so seamless and flawless on the skin, and especially with the Cover FX illuminating drops in this foundation, it's gorgeous because this foundation is normally quite matte, but whenever you use illumination drops underneath it, it makes it completely different and it makes it look more dewy and glowy and just a lot healthier as well. And this shade especially is awesome for girls with more of a false tan as well, just because it is slightly more warmer and a little bit more tan too. So as you can see, I do the face in stages, so I apply a little bit of foundation and then just buff it in, and then repeat those steps the whole way around the entire face. Now I'm taking my Makeup Revolution Conceal and Define concealers for under the eyes and also to highlight as well. I like to use a lighter shade just to sort of highlight the skin as well as conceal too. So I pretty much just apply it with my MAC brush again, just the same one that I use my foundation, making sure I get right up underneath the eyes just to cancel out any discoloration, darkness, and just to make sure everything looks nice and flawless. I just apply this under the eyes, the chin, down the centre of the face, like the forehead and the nose. And then to blend this out, I just took a little smaller Zoeva brush to get right on underneath the eyes, and in the larger areas I just used my regular foundation brush that I used before. So yeah, I make sure that the head and the forehead and stuff is blended in with the bigger brush, and then under the eyes I took this Zoeva 227 brush underneath the eyes, just because it is a smaller area and you don't want to irritate your client's eyes by using a bigger brush. So the smaller the brush the better really, and it sort of doesn't make your clients freak out as much whenever you're blending and stuff, just because obviously if you use a bigger brush your client might start blinking and their eyes could water, so if you use a smaller brush that's going to less likely happen. And then just to sort of blend over it all entirely, again I just took my larger foundation brush just to make sure all the edges were completely blended. After I do my concealer, I make sure to set it right away just to ensure that I don't get any creasing. I'm just taking my RCMA No Colour powder on a NYX dual fibre brush, just because it is a dual fibre brush, it really like sort of blends out the product as you're applying it, so it's not like big chunks of powder being stuck to the concealer. So I like to use a more sort of fluffy, feathery brush for that. And by setting underneath the eyes as well, it means the powder is going to sort of act as like a barrier for whenever you do under the lower lash line, so if you get any fallout and things, you can just sort of wipe it away because the powder's there. Whereas if we didn't do the powder, all of the other shadows that we still need to apply will just stick to the foundation and create a hot mess. So it's good that you sort of set your under eye straight away. And then here I'm just taking a little small brush again, the Makeup Forever one, and just using this to carve out around the tops of the brows, just with a little bit of the same foundation, because I don't like it looking too harsh around here. So I'm just sort of filling in any of the areas that my bigger foundation brush wasn't able to do with this little smaller brush. Now what I'm doing is taking my Maybelline gel liner on a Inglot 49 SS brush. It's just a little pencil brush. Sometimes I use a Zoeva one, sometimes I use this one, it doesn't really matter. So I use this to place the gel liner on the waterline, and then after I do that I place some slightly on the skin, and then take a clean version of one of these brushes to then buff that out as well. And I feel like this makes it look so much more dramatic and smoky. And the key to this looking really nice is making sure that you get all the little gaps filled. So like all the little gaps where like your little lower lashes come out of and things, make sure that all those gaps are completely filled, just so it looks completely intense and so dark and smoky under there. I'm taking that same pink shade that we use on the top of the eyes under the lower lash line, so just applying it with a Inglot 49 SS brush, a clean one obviously, and just placing this along the bottom edge of that black. And then I do go in with a darker shade that we use in the top lid on the bottom of the eyes as well, just to set the black gel liner in place too. It's the same shade that we use in the inner corners and outer corners, the shade Bocelli from the Lime Crime palette, on a little flat shader brush from Inglot, just to make sure that all of the lower shadow shades sort of blend into each other too. And I'm just taking a white shadow, but because it's sort of mixed in with pink, it creates like a lighter pink inner corner highlight, which I thought was really pretty too. So now what I'm doing is just bronzing up the skin with my MAC Mineralized Skin Finish Natural in Dark Deepest with a MAC 169 brush. And I pretty much just put this in the hollows of the cheeks, just anywhere that the sun would naturally hit pretty much. So just around the sides of the face, top of the forehead, around the temples, and also just to sort of contour, I put it down the jawline as well. And then this is an awesome little tip to do as well. So whenever you have a more sort of smoky eye like this, what I like to do is take some extra bronzer and sort of blend it into the outer portion of the shadow, and I feel like it just makes everything look so much more blended. But obviously make sure you don't go overboard, and again to make sure that the bronzer itself is also blended as well, because obviously you don't want to see a big patch of bronzer just sitting on the outer portion of your shadows. So make sure that everything is completely blended. And then I'm just taking some highlighter from Doll Beauty and just applying it on the tops of the cheekbones, upper lip, centre of the nose, and also on the forehead, just to make this look really glowy and golden looking. And the lashes my client is wearing today is my Sassy Lashes in the style Luxe. And then what I'm doing is just taking some of this NYX matte liquid liner just to cover the lash band, and also to sort of cancel out any of the little white bits of glue that was just left behind. And it also sort of just makes the whole look more put together whenever the liner is just perfectly sitting as well. After I do my client's liner, I always make sure they have their eyes closed for a bit as well, just to ensure that the liner doesn't transfer and to make sure it's completely dry before they do open their eyes. And while the liner is drying, I just go back in and just add some more powder through the brows just to really make them more defined, and just clean up anything that maybe just sort of lost intensity whilst blending. You know, I just like to add some more product just to make sure everything's nice and strong. And then I'm just taking this Milani liquid lipstick in the shade Adorable, and then topping it with a nude gloss from Peaches and Cream. It's just a gorgeous nude colour. I always prefer a glossy lip, and I feel like most people do as well, because matte sometimes can be quite drying, and I feel like a gloss just looks a lot nicer in my opinion, but yeah. And then finally just applying some Benefit They're Real mascara. Any mascara will do. I'm only really applying it to blend the natural lashes in with the false ones, just to ensure you can't see any gaps and to make sure everything is blended into one another pretty much. So everyone, I really hope you found this helpful, and let me know if you would like to see any more in the future. I definitely want to do more of these because I feel like I'm going to help out a lot of people, obviously, by showing my technique and the way that I do my clients' makeup, because obviously it is a lot different to how I do my makeup. So yeah, I love you guys, and thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.